So Disney are doing a live-action remake of Peter Pan. Let's see how that's getting on.
Are you...
Lost boys.
Every last one of us.
But you're not all boys. So?
Right, are you telling me you sprinkled magic fairy dust on me just so you could fly me to an island which have people whose IQ couldn't boil water? Scriptwriters really showing their potential when they can't even come up with a retort to a question they pose themselves. But don't you understand? This is actually an improvement. This is more inclusive. The trailer reveals the Lost Boys are not all boys. Peter Pan appears to have a more inclusive take on the story for a modern audience. This is Peter Pan for a modern audience because audiences before never had women in them. No, they only began to exist in 1995 with the Spice Girls, and so now we actually have to include them in everything, even in apparently boys. But there is an issue that this is explained in the original source material, where he says that the Lost Boys are people who fall out of their prams when the nurse is looking the other way, and that there are no lost girls because girls are far too clever to fall out of their prams. So I guess we know what it means for a modern audience. It means that apparently the lost girls just aren't as smart as they were in the 1950s, which admittedly would explain why they don't understand the nonsensical nature of calling themselves Lost Boys. In fact, the more you realise that this island is populated with people who are just too thick to stay in a pram, the more sense the trailer makes. Maybe that's why two grown professional sword fighters can't beat a tiny little girl in a sword fight. And this guy on the right just falls backwards when she flies in the air, even though she's absolutely nowhere near him and doesn't touch him at all. That's some Rings of Power quality right there, like when a load of guards walked into a cell just because Galadriel existed. Also, in the nature of inclusiveness, I do look forward to being cast as Galadriel myself in Season 2, as well as in the next Wonder Woman movie where the Amazons are all called Dave. But as ever, the most entertaining reactions to this come from the media, who are just backed into a corner and forced to defend something that doesn't make sense. That's how we get there's nothing wrong with Peter Pan, you're just salty. It seems par for the course that Disney keep getting the same complaints for all of their productions. Maybe if you varied the quality level so they weren't all trash in the same way, people would stop making the same complaints. But no, don't you understand? Peter Pan has always been inclusive and experimental, and if that's the case, why do you need to change it? No, Peter Pan has always been this way, and yet we must adapt it for a modern audience. You know, you may think it's weird that the show doesn't understand what boys are, but Peter Pan has always been doing this. It's not changing the source material, it's just updating the special effects and the methods of visual storytelling. And it is incredible to see someone that recognizes there's a problem and yet defends it anyway. It's like an instinctual reflex response. Oh, you're criticizing this? I better jump to its defense, even when they don't like it happening themselves. There is definitely an overwhelming sense of fatigue when it comes to Disney's live-action remakes, and that's a comment you see repeated all over the place. Many fans have grown tired with Disney's various remakes, with The Lion King, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast being just a few examples of reimagined classics. Even the people jumping to its defense know that these are tiring. They're exhausted by it. They just want it to stop. And yet still feel the need to defend it, even when they're willing to support change because it supports the ideas that they want to believe in. There's something inherent about it which they know destroying classic works of literature is wrong. They know there's a reason why these stories have lasted for 100 years, with so many people putting the weight of emotion behind it. And no matter how much they want to argue to defend the ideas, to say you can change it, and actually it won't affect it at all. Of course you can recast everyone and change the plot and the story and all the themes, but it'll still remain exactly the same property. You're not going to lose any of the original value when you come along and alter it for a modern audience. And yet you still don't like it and get tired of them doing it. It doesn't matter what their brain thinks or what they think they should defend, they know there's something exhausting about the movies, that the new themes within them don't provide the same nourishment that the original ones did. The original being a story, a lesson, that you may want to remain in this kind of childlike state, but there is a benefit, a need, a requirement within you to grow up, move on, and become an adult. And to actually engage in a full life, you may need to sacrifice something that you really enjoy and think you want. And now I'm not saying you can't update the themes of Peter Pan for the current year. Now, if growing up for a man is moving on from dreams of swashbuckling and fighting to realizing you need to work, provide, raise a family, have people rely on you, then growing up for a woman is very similar. That to grow up meant to have a family, have kids, raise and nurture them. And that was very common back when the original source material was made. It's not so common now. Modernity has definitely led to everyone remaining in a more childlike state, so I'm not even against the idea of the movie. It's just incredibly stupid to call them the Lost Boys. And obviously those themes are quite complex. To present them in a story is quite complex. They'd have to be your priority. And it just doesn't feel like it is. Because you're not leading with the quality of the script or the themes. What you're leading with is, oh, look what we've done to the Lost Boys, or haha, we've changed Tinkerbell. You put these in to grab headlines, to get easy media attention, and because you think you have to. Disney as a company makes changing the characters their priority, rather than the script and the themes. And so it's not that changing the character individually is a problem in and of itself. It's more a sign of what it means about you, where your priorities lie. The reason people are fed up with it isn't because of the action itself. Nobody cares about Samuel L. Jackson. It's simply a symbol of the quality of people behind the work. We know that it's going to be trash because you're proving it's not the quality of the entertainment or the story or the themes. It's not even actually updating the themes for a modern setting, which is your priority. What you mean are basic physical characteristics of the people. That's where your priorities lie. Am I being offensive? That's where your priorities lie. Disney enlisted a team of cultural consultants, sensitivity readers, for Peter Pan and Wendy descriptions because they didn't like the original source material. They're trying to avoid accusations of cultural insensitivity, trying to omit any stereotypical depictions in the film, because in the 1953 classic, he calls Peter Pan his pale-faced brother. Honestly, I don't understand the problem. I think it's important that they leave the past where it is. I watched all the Peter Pan films, so you would assume that actually there isn't a problem with them, because you actually watched them as a kid and enjoyed them. But since then, you've been told a few more things, you've read a few articles from lunatics, and now suddenly, now they're a massive issue that has to be altered. In fact, this was so vital that she just had to be part of the team herself, all hands on deck. God forbid somebody calls somebody else their brother, how horrific that would be. It just goes to show where your priorities lie. You're not writing the best script, because you're having other people who aren't writers coming in to change your script, to alter it, to make sure that we just don't offend those people over there. It's often not the specific detail people are talking about, which they even mean is the problem. It's a reference to what it shows about the corporate culture behind it. And now they're so obsessed with this stuff that they take their eye off the ball, and it makes it impossible for them to actually do justice to even the original ideas that they have. There's definitely an updated story you could tell about the effects that modernity has had on women compared to where they were in the 50s. But if the problem is, if you agree with the ideas that caused the problems in the first place, you'll never be able to make a movie explaining what they are. And so because Disney missed those problems, they don't understand the core themes. We just get a woman sword fighting multiple men on a ship.
You're not all boys. So?
And because it is just a thin veneer you're trying to coat the problems with, everyone can see through it. Disney's trailer was criticized for its depictions of Hook and Tinkerbell. Twitter users immediately took to how Law was stylized as Hook. Apparently Hook is canonically hot, played by an actor who is famously good-looking, and yet somehow they made him decidingly unappealing. The audacity to cast Jude Law as Captain Hook and make him look like that. This is a criminal offense. And from the Metro, we get, I'm all for inclusion, but changing a character for the sake of it isn't it. Please stop switching characters, it's cheap. Make new characters or use existing ones to represent us, instead of using cheap pop-outs. What's so hard about making a character from scratch? Get creative. And even the people apparently rushing to Disney's defense say, changing her has absolutely no effect on me. And so even the people apparently on your side is going, this isn't of any benefit, it doesn't really do anything. Then why does it matter? It would be far better to respect what came before, respect its history, its cultural heritage. But instead, you need to change it. That's more difficult, it takes more energy, and that means it matters. Disney is doing it because it matters to them. It's a priority for them. They're willing to spend time, effort, and money changing things because it's important to them. Well, at least the people that work at the company. From the corporate profit level, they don't care about it at all. It's about money. For them, it's a cover, a facade, a thin veneer to hide that actually they are creatively bankrupt, and this is the only thing they've got. They want to use their classic IPs, but they don't understand why they were popular in the first place. They can't comprehend the ideas, the themes, the moral messaging that underpins them, and so they can't edit them, they can't change them, they can't improve them. They can't genuinely take those themes and move them into the modern time because they can't comprehend the values beneath them in the first place. And so we're left with very basic, obvious changes in the desperate hope that we can use it as a shield against any criticism at all. And it's not working anymore. Even the people that they thought would be on their side aren't. And so you end up with a trailer that got 36,000 upvotes and 272,000 downvotes. And the comments got the Rings of Power treatment. I loved where Peter said, with great power comes great responsibility. Love the part where people said, evil is not able to create anything new. It can only distort and destroy what has been invented or made by the forces of good. And my personal favourite, I love when Wendy said, you're not Peter Pan. We're all Peter Pan. Something that keeps happening in The Flash. No, Barry, we're the Flash. Or at the start of this latest series, she went, but Barry, I reignited your spark. Taking credit for Barry Allen being the Flash. Check. I can understand why it worked to begin with. Disney come out and go, no, we care about you, you're our priority. Makes you want to defend them, it feels like they're on your side. And then you see the movies, and they're awful, and they don't understand what it was, and you look back at the old classic content, and you're like, actually no, that was better. You begin to think time and time again as the pattern continues, why are we always just getting trash now? The words, the phrases, the marketing that may have got people on side before now becomes a red flag as a sign that nobody knows what they're doing. Because the people that use this as a marketing strategy never have any idea what they're doing. If they did, they wouldn't need to use that as an excuse, as a shield. They'd lead with the themes, they'd lead with the story, they'd lead with something which actually matters, rather than who you cast in a role. But Disney is a zombie company who have hired people who can't even comprehend their own IPs that they own, who can't understand why people like them, the values that underpin them, because they don't value their history and their heritage. All they can see is, I'm 23 and I know better than you and I want to lead us into the future. The whole basis for their worldview and the people that Disney are hiring are, my thoughts on Disney's past is that I hope they leave it where it is, and I think they will. This is a company that relies on its IPs, relies on its character, relies on its own history, and yet they employ people who don't think it matters, who can't comprehend why Disney was ever successful in the first place. Even when they liked that stuff as a kid, they've now forgotten it because they went through university and came out the other side with very different views. So is it any wonder that Disney is now laying off 7,000 people, that the company is going down the pan when you've replaced all of your staff with people that don't even understand the foundational principles of your own business model? And it isn't going to change until you employ people who understand why Peter Pan should have been left alone, who understand the values that made it successful in the first place. Because only someone that appreciates those values will ever be able to update it in a way which maintains what it was to begin with, rather than destroying it and building on its corpse an entirely different beast, which has all of the same names, but none of the same character or soul. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.